It is Monday, October 28th. It's that time of year when we remember all of our favorite spooky stories about spiders and monsters and things that go bump in the night. A collection of Indigenous horror fiction is being released at a launch event tomorrow in Windsor. And for more on this unique collection of haunting tales, we're joined in the studio by D.A. Lockhart. He's contributing to an anthology. Good morning.
Bojo, good morning.
Tell me a little bit about this anthology.
Pretty exciting that we get to put this together. I got invited by Kagadons, who is Ontario's premier all-Indigenous press. And what they did is they put together a whole bunch of what we call winter stories or scary stories in an anthology featuring some of most of the country's top Indigenous storytellers.
Where did the idea come from?
So a couple of years back, there was an anthology by Penguin, I believe it is, and it was called Don't Whistle in the Night, and it was an incredibly successful collection. So they wanted to kind of build off of that, and of course to keep as much of the funding and everything else going into the Indigenous community. So, yeah, kind of building on that success.
How did you get brought into this?
Well, I was up in Owen Sound last year to launch a book, and Renee Abrams, who works for Kegadons, and Kateria Wednesday Dam were like, hey, you write fiction too. Do you want to submit a short story or give us a short story for this new horror anthology? And I'm like, yeah. So I kind of came up with one, and I sent them one. So
What is yours?
it's actually about magnet fishing and the Nain Rouge. It's,
Okay.
what the river gives is what the river gives. And it's actually set just across the river here. So it's about some guys who go out magnet fishing. I'm sure you've heard about that, where they go in and they look for shopping carts or guns or cars. And while they're doing that, the Nain Rouge shows up. So they actually haul something up that brings the Nain Rouge, but it's that story.
Okay. How is Indigenous horror stories different from the mainstream horror?
Well, I think there's a lot in common with them. For us, mainly it's seasonal. So we in Lenape, we often say winter stories. If you tell them out of season, the little bugs will bite you. So there's a time of year that we like to tell stories, and it's much the same way that we work even as sort of post-colonial peoples, where we have our horror stories. I think about like the strange ones, and these are the ones that usually dominate our cultures. Are like the haunted muff of Grosse Isle, or the Nain Rouge, or Mishu Pishu. These supernatural stories. They sort of go across every culture.
What do you like about the genre of horror?
I think it's the imagination of it. I think there's a way that it enables us to break down those barriers of what's super real and what's not real, and it enables us to put our fears and some of our anxieties into things that might not be other people, so that we can sort of work through some of those emotions as well with that.
What are some of your other favorite stories in the book?
Oh, well, let me put it this way: if you like fishing, you'll like this story. There's a story about ice fishing in here it's phenomenal. I'm talking a lot about fishing. Maybe it's just
That's
the time
okay.
of day.
What's that one about?
I can't tell you the horror stories. If I tell you the horror
Well, I
stories this
like
early,
it.
I know. So one of the big things with this, and I want when people come to this book, to think about it as a storyteller. So you come in with no knowledge of what's going on, and let the voices carry you where they're at. So if I tell you, I've probably told you too much about my story already.
Okay, well, how scary do they get?
It varies. It's more so. Nathan Adler's the head editor on it, and he's more of the old style of storytelling, where most of the horror and the violence takes place off the page. So, like Shakespeare did. So it's not as gory as you might get with some of the more contemporary versions of horror, like Stranger Things, for example. So it's not quite that violent.
Could they be made into films? Are they
Yes.
visual?
Yes, all these stories are very visual. They really work in that sort of. They carry a lot of the Indigenous, I guess, symbology with it. If you look at the cover, actually has Wendigo on the cover. I said it was a res dog, but they didn't really like that idea as much. But the sort of werewolf of the woods, right?
So there's a launch event tomorrow night. What can people expect?
Well, tomorrow night we're launching at John R. Park and on the lovely Essex Lake Erie shore there. We're going to have myself and Nathan Adler will be there, and we're going to bring in a couple of the other authors via video because they live far away. So Wob Rice will be on video. I think Richard Van Camp will be as well. So we have a lot of the top tier writers that will be there for the community to interact with, either being in person or via Zoom.
And if people can't make it there, where can we get the book?
The book should be widely available. I know everyone from Biblioasis to Indigo should be ordering copies, and it won't be available until November the 6th. Unless you go to the event, we'll have copies available at the event. It's already pre-selling really well, so I would recommend if you want a copy to come on out to the event. Or if you can't make it out tomorrow night, it's on Zoom as well.
How
So
much is it?
it's free.
The book?
Oh, the book. The book's $20.
And what's the name of the book?
Zegajimo.
Where did that come from?
It's the Ojibwe word. It's the niche word for scary story. It's funny. It makes it sound like it's bigger than everything else. But winter story, Zegajimo.
What's your connection to Halloween? Do you have a memory, or is there a certain go-to movie that you like, or a book that you go to read?
Well, we were really fortunate. We used to live in Indianapolis, and we lived in the biggest Halloween neighborhood in the Midwest, which is Irvington. And we'd get on a night there, we get 200 trick-or-treaters easily. But my favorite movies to watch this time of year, I always go with Ghostbusters. I like
Okay.
the old school ones. So
I like that. That's tame. I can handle that one. Thank you so much for coming in this morning.
well, Winishi for having me. Thank you.